Hi guys, welcome back to my miniature things. My name is Saeed. A couple videos ago, we made a bakery for my sister, and then in my last video, I told you guys that she ended up not taking the bakery because it was a little bit too big and it just wasn't her style. It was a little bit too fancy. Well, I have a chance to redeem myself, you guys, because her birthday is next week and she said that she wanted a library for her dolls and she wanted it to be in dark wood. And she also wants it to be able to fit into a shelf that she has at home. So we have to make sure not to go overboard and make it too big like I usually do. I think that's gonna be my biggest problem is the size of it and then also not making it too fancy. Because you know I love fancy. We're definitely gonna have to try our hardest not to go overboard with the gold and the moldings and all of that stuff. But without further ado, let's start making a doll library that fits into a shelf for my sister. So luckily for us, my sister and I have the same exact shelves, so we could use this to get the measurements for the library. But these shelves are customizable. If you notice down here, some of the shelves are a little bit taller than others, but I think the shelf that we're building the library for is actually the same measurements as this shelf over here. So let's see if we can get some measurements on this shelf so we know what we're working with. And yes, you guys, I know I am missing door handles. Please don't judge me. So let's grab our handy dandy tape measure and see what we're working with here. So let's try. Oh, oopsies. I was trying not to knock over anything, but you know that's impossible when you're dealing with minis. Actually, I think it might be a little bit easier if we did it from this side just because there's nothing really over here to knock over. But in terms of the depth of the shelf, we're looking at about 10.5. For the height of our room, I think our shelf measures from the floor all the way up to the ceiling about 20 inches, a little bit over 20 inches, but I think we're going to go with 20 inches just to be safe. And then lastly, the width of it from one side all the way to the other is about 30 inches, which gives us a space to work with that's 30 inches wide by 20 inches tall by 10.5 inches deep. Okay, now let's get to work. Actually, before we get to work, let's fix these. There, that's a lot better. By the way, for everyone that's been asking me where I got these bookcases in my last video, I got them on the IKEA website, and the name of them are the Billy the Billy bookcase, not the Bully, Billy. They do not come with these door handles. I actually got those on Amazon. And I know that I'm still missing a door handle from over here, but there's nothing I can do about it because I took it and made it into a vase for my dolls. So since she did say that she wanted a dark wooden library, I got this contact paper off of Amazon and I think she's gonna love it. And you guys, I got the really fat roll just because you guys know I'm constantly running out of contact paper throughout my videos, like 3 or 4 times per video. But not this time, honey. She's thick. Well, hopefully. And then I got these pieces of craft paper from Joann's to do the floor. And while I really like this one, I have so much of it that I feel like I can build a pretty big set for myself with this. So I think I'm going to keep this one because this one, I only have about 3 or 4 of them. So I think it'll be perfect because her space is so small and I think it matches a lot better. So I cut a piece of foam board down to 10.5 inches by 30 inches and I cover it over in my craft paper from Joann's. And as you guys know, Joann's is closing down. So they're having clearance sales. So these were only 25 cents a sheet. And notice that I did roll my craft paper over one of the 30-inch side just because this is going to be sitting on a shelf so that when we look at it, it just looks a lot more finished from the front instead of having to look at the edge of the white foam board. For the walls, let's start with the side wall. I cut a piece that measures 10.5 inches by 20 inches and I covered it in my Amazon wood grain contact paper. And as you can see, my grain is running from top to bottom. It's just going to look a lot better and a lot more realistic if you do it like that. Also, if you notice, I did roll one of my 20-inch sides and then the top of it, which measures 10.5 inches, just because again, you don't want to see the white foam board from the front. And because the shelf is a little bit taller than 20 inches, I don't want that when you're looking down at it that you're seeing the top of the white foam board. Now, I do want to put a few windows in this room. I want to put one right here and a couple more on the back wall. But the problem is that this is going to be in a shelf, so there's not going to be anything to look at when we look through the windows. So I was thinking that we could add some pictures back there. I got this calendar at the dollar store. It was only $1.50 and it comes with all of these different pictures of different scenes in nature. The only problem is that they have printed sayings on every single page, so it cuts into our picture. So we need to find a couple pictures that have a similar theme because one picture isn't going to be enough. So I was thinking to use these two. Oh crap, you guys, look at this. They really went to town on the size of this one. It covers up most of the picture. And pretty much the same thing with this one, but let's see if we can make it work. So for the window that's going on this wall, I think I want to use this picture and I want to use this portion right here just because I kind of want like a tall window. So I made a cutout where I want my window to be. It measures 11.5 inches tall by 4 inches wide. And it measures 2 inches from the back, and we'll know the back because that's the part that's not rolled over with the contact paper, and 3.5 inches from the bottom. Again, the bottom is the part that's not rolled over with the contact paper. Let's now cut some half-inch strips of foam board that measure 11.5 inches long and place them on either side of our window. And then 2 more pieces that measure 5 inches long on the top and on the bottom. Cut half-inch strips of white craft paper and use it to clean up our edges. Cut a piece of plexiglass down to size. I found this one on Amazon, and I'm just going to place this right on the back. Cut a 1/4 inch strip of foam board down to 11.5 inches and place it right down the middle. Cut shorter strips of my 1/4 inch strips of foam board, and I placed it on either side of that strip that we just placed in the middle. I was supposed to film myself doing this, but you guys, I got carried away and I ended up finishing the entire piece without filming it. But you get the point. There's a piece on this side and a piece on this side going all the way down. Let's now cut out our background and place it behind our window. And you guys know when I stick my plexiglass in place, I usually use duct tape. But when I stuck the picture in place, I use clear Scotch tape just so it's easily removable so that if my sister wants to change the picture, she can. I then followed all those same steps to make the back wall, but instead of having one window, we have two. And they both measure 4 inches wide by 8.5 inches tall, 2 inches from each side, and 6.5 inches from the bottom. For the other side wall, I cut a piece that measures 10.5 inches by 20 inches, and I make sure to roll my contact paper over the sides that are going to be visible. I think we have enough windows, so I think on this wall we should do a door right here. So I went ahead and I cut one out. It measures 5 inches wide by 15 inches tall and 2 inches from the side. Cut some 1/2 inch strips to make a border around our door, just like we did for our windows. And don't forget to clean up your rough edges with white craft paper. Now, usually when I'm making a door like this, a non-working door, I will use a piece of foam board as the actual door and stick it on right back here. But we can't do that this time because, as I said, this is going to be on display in a shelf. So when you look at it from the side like this, you're actually going to see the piece of foam board back there. Not to mention, it'll also create a 1/4 inch gap between this wall and the wall of the shelf. So we need something really thin to put back here to make the door. So I was thinking that we can use a piece of plexiglass and cover it in our contact paper and place it behind our door frame so that you can't see it when we turn our piece to the side. And also it's nice and sturdy, so if someone knocks on it, it won't break down or fall apart. Now let's get some molding onto this door. I cut and cover all the way around a few 1.5 inch strips of foam board. These two measure 6 inches long, and I'm going to put them in the middle, and the rest of them measure 3 inches long, and I'm going to put them on the top and on the bottom. And then for the door handle, I covered a 1/4 inch strip of foam board that measures about 3 inches long in my gold craft paper all the way around, and then I place it right on the side, giving us the shell of our library with 3 walls and a floor. And you guys, I'm having so much anxiety trying to fit everything that I have in my head into this tiny little space, because you guys know that I love a really large space. My spaces are usually like 10 times the size of this, and even when I do make them large, I have to extend them to make them even larger. But it's okay. I want my sister to take this project this time. I don't want her to leave any of it behind because it was too big, so we're just gonna have to work with it. So let's get started on the shelves. I want to start with some shelves over there on that wall, and I'm thinking that I want to make the shelves onto the wall just to save on some space. Because even though the back of the shelves only pick up a 1/4 inch of space, when you're working with 10.5 inches in depth, a 1/4 inch is a lot. So let's start by cutting a piece of foam board down to 1 3/4 inches by 16 inches, and I cover both sides in my wood grain contact paper, making sure to roll one of the 16-inch sides. And I place it right up against the edge of my window, making sure that the bottom of it is flush with the bottom of my floor. Cut 2 1-inch strips of foam board. They measure about 3.5 inches long, and we're going to place one down to the bottom in the back. And this one doesn't have to be covered. I only covered it just because it was cut from a piece of scrap and it ended up being covered. But this one does have to be covered. This one goes in the front about a 1/4 inch away from the edge. Cut another piece that measures 1 3/4 by 3.5, and make sure to roll your edge and place it right on the top of those 1-inch strips that we just installed. Cut 5 pieces of foam board that measure 1.5 by 3.5 and cover them on both sides with your contact paper, making sure to roll one of the sides. And now we are going to start placing them about every 2.5 inches, going all the way up, making sure that your rolled side is facing forward. Add another piece that measures 1 3/4 by 16 inches to the other side, and a piece that measures 1 3/4 by 4 inches that's covered all the way around, and I place that on the top, giving us our first finished bookshelf for our library. And I do want to make this little corner over here into a reading nook, so let's make a little seating area right under the window so adults can sit and read their book next to the window. So let's start by cutting a piece that measures 3 inches by 5 inches and another piece that measures 1 inch by 3 inches, and joining it on the side that measures 3 inches. Repeat with another 1-inch piece for the other side, and another 3 by 5 inch piece to the back. Let's now place that piece right under our window, making sure the bottom of it lines up with the bottom of our wall, and then the top of it, you should have about a 1/2 inch gap between the top of the box and the bottom of our window frame. For the seat cushion, I have this pack of pleather fabric that I have no idea where I got this from, you guys, but this is the color of our room, and I was thinking to go with something a little bit lighter just to give it a bit of a contrast. So I was thinking about going with this one. And you guys, thank God that this this seat is so tiny because this is literally all that we get of each color. But let's cut a piece of foam board down to 1 3/4 by 5 inches. Cut a piece of felt down to size, double it, and now we can roll it over our 3 by 5 inch piece. And you want to roll both of your 5-inch sides first, the longer sides, and then go into your shorter side that measures 1 3/4 and roll that. After rolling it, you're going to have this little bit of extra fabric on the sides. You're just going to take your scissors and cut as close to the foam board as you can. And then when you get to the corner, you just kind of want to round it out a bit. Don't go too crazy when you're cutting the corners because you want a little bit of extra fluff there to create a nice round corner when we place our fabric over it. So you should end up with something that looks like this. See how my corners are nice and rounded and they're not sharp like when we first cut the foam board. Let's now lay our piece face down on our sample size piece of leather here, and we're just going to cut around it and leave about 3/4 of an inch overlap on each side. So just enough for us to be able to roll over and glue down our pleather. And you're basically going to follow the same steps to cover this piece. First, you roll the longer sides and then the shorter side. But this time, you're not going to cut off these little extra pieces right here. You're going to fill this part up with glue, not completely fill it up, but like put a little bit of glue in there, put a little bit on this side, put a little bit on this side, and then you're going to hold this corner and pull it taut like this. Repeat for all 4 corners and you should end up with something that looks like this. We can now glue our seat cushion right to the top of our little box under our window. I then decided to add another shelf on the side right over here so that it becomes like a real reading nook. And you guys, this is so friggin' cute. I am obsessed with this. It's pretty much the same exact steps as we used to make this shelf, except this one measures 16 inches tall by 2 inches wide by 1.5 inches deep. And I was thinking it would be really cute if we added like a little faux drawer right here. So I cut a piece of foam board that measures 2 inches by 4 inches and I covered it all the way around in my brown contact paper, and I'm just going to stick that right here. And then for the drawer handle, let's use these decorative push pins that I found at the Dollar Tree. And I'm basically just gonna push this in right here. And this is what it's looking like in our space. I think that shelf fits so nicely in that corner. I am obsessed. Now for the rest of this wall, I kind of want to do like a little desk right under the window, followed by another shelf, maybe a fireplace in the middle, and another shelf with another desk under this window. Let's start by cutting a piece of foam board down to 5 inches by 5 1/4 inches and place it right under this window. You don't have to cover this piece in contact paper because no one's ever going to see it. I then cut another piece that measures 5 by 5 3/4, and this one I do cover in contact paper. And I do want some doors on the front of my desk, so I cut another piece that measures 2 by 4 inches and I cover it all the way around in my brown contact paper, and I place it right on the side. I then repeat with another 2 by 4 piece on the other side. I then added a couple more of our decorative tacks to make some door handles. For the top of it, I cut a piece that measures 1 3/4 by 5 inches, and I cover the top of it in my brown contact paper, and then the side of it I covered it in gold craft paper, but you guys, this is the only gold craft paper that I'm going to use, I promise. Let's now take that piece and place it right on the top of our piece with the doors, but we're going to place it so that it's about 1/4 inch away from the edge. Now let's slide our 1 3/4 inch piece on the top in between the window frame and this piece down here, like this. Okay, I know that's not really like a desk, it's kind of like a cupboard thingy, but they can use it as a desk, right? It has a desk top. Okay, now that we're done with the desk, remember I said I wanted to do a couple of shelves over on this side, so I'm gonna go do that right now because I don't want to keep making the same thing over and over and over again and then you guys get bored. So I'm gonna go make a couple more shelves and I'll be right back, and then we can do the fireplace. Okay, I am back, and as you can see, I added a few more shelves. These two over here are the exact same measurements as the first shelf that we built over here on this side. And if you notice, I didn't actually finish the tops of my shelves, and that's just because I want this entire piece to be one like shelving unit. So I kind of want to join them together and make them like one piece. So I cut a piece that measures 2 inches by 15.5 inches, and I cover it all the way around. And then I place that on the top to join them. I also added another like little desk thingy like under the window over there, and another shelf over there next to the door. That one's a little bit smaller. It only measures 2 1/4 inches wide, but the rest of the measurements are the same. For the fireplace, I was thinking about using this printable that I found on Google. Let's just see if it fits. Okay, it's perfect. I'm just really excited, not only that it fits, but it's also kind of like the perfect size, because as you guys know, I'm not the best at using computers. So I never know the size of what something's gonna come out to be. I literally have to guess and just pray that it comes out the right size. So now that we have the fire going, let's build the actual fireplace around it. I just recorded doing this, but my mic wasn't turned on, but as you can see, I've joined 2 pieces of foam board here. This piece measures 6 1/4 inches by 2 inches, and the edges are rolled on either end, the 2-inch sides. And then this piece over here is 2 1/4 inches by 2 inches. Let's now take another 2 1/4 by 2-inch piece and place it on the other side. Place another piece that measures 6 1/4 by 2.5 inches, and this piece does not have to be covered. No one's going to see it, but we're going to place it in the back. To finish it off, we're going to place a piece that measures 2 3/4 by 6 1/4, and this piece is covered all the way around in my brown contact paper, and I place that on the top. And this piece is going to serve as the base to our fireplace. Now let's start building the sides. I cut 3 pieces of foam board that all measure 1.5 by 4.5. The first one isn't covered at all, the second one is only covered on the surface, and the third one is covered all the way around. So let's join the 2 that are covered on the side. So the piece that's rolled is obviously going to be our front. The piece that is only covered on one side is going to be the side, and this over here is going to be our back piece. We're going to cut a piece that measures 1 inch by 4 inches. Why do I say 1 inches? It's 1 inch. 1 inch by 4.5 inches, and place it in the back. And now we can finally place the last 1.5 by 4.5 inch piece to the other side. I then repeated to make another one, and now we can place these on the sides of our fire. We're going to place the side that's not covered in our contact paper right up against the shelf, and the same thing for the other side. So now that we have the sides of our fireplace, let's make the top. Cut and cover all the way around a piece that measures 1.5 by 6.5, another piece that measures 1.5 by 2 inches, and I make sure to roll the bottom of this piece on the 2-inch side, and then I attach it to the 1.5-inch side. This piece measures 2 inches by 6 inches and doesn't have to be covered all the way around, but you do want to make sure that the bottom of it's covered. I accidentally did this. I thought it was a different piece, but I'm just going to place this right back here in the corner. Place another piece that measures 1.5 by 2 inches that's rolled at the bottom on the other side. Place our piece on the top of our side pieces, and then finish it off with a piece that measures 2.5 inches by 6.5 inches that's covered all the way around on the top. I also have this little bag of wood stems that I think I got at the dollar store, you guys. I'm not sure. I've had this forever. But I was thinking that we can use it down here to add a more 3D element to our firewood, giving us our completed fireplace. And you guys, I am dying to use some of these moldings around it. I just feel like it amps it up so much, but I just feel like she's not going to like it. So I'm not going to do it. But oh my God. Oh, it would have been so cute. Now that we're done with the fireplace and all the shelves, let's make some seating. I kind of want to make some big leather chairs. Well, not big, because nothing can really be big in this space, but let's make some leather chairs that go right in front of the fireplace. Let's start by cutting 2 pieces that measure 1.5 by 2.5 and join them on the side that measures 1.5. Cut 2 more pieces that measure 2 inches by 2.5 inches, and we are going to place one at the bottom of our piece and the other one on the top. Place another piece that measures 1.5 by 2.5 to the other side, which leaves us with an opening back here. So let's cut 1 more piece that measures 1.5 by 2.5 and place it over that. We now need to cover this in some fabric, and I was thinking this brown pleather from Joann's would be a perfect match for our room. And as you can see, this is not a sample size. I have 2 yards of this, so we have more than enough to make our chairs. We actually have more than enough to make a sofa, but we're not going that crazy. So I cut a piece down to size, and as you notice, it's a little bit bigger than my piece, about 1/2 inch on either side. I'm now going to cover this entire thing in glue and start wrapping my fabric from the edge of my piece like this, going all the way around. So you should end up with something that looks like this. This larger part up here is going to be where our doll is going to sit, and this is going to be the front of our chair. And then obviously this is going to be the bottom. When I was gluing my fabric onto this piece, I only put the hot glue on the bottom of the chair and on the top of the chair, like the seat part. I did not put it in the front because, as you can see, the glue makes the fabric pretty bumpy. So this part right here, skip the glue. Now for the sides, let's fold in our front piece first, and now we can fold in our side pieces. I then repeat it for the other side, and you guys, this part does not have to be super neat because no one's gonna see it once we're done. Let's now make a seat cushion to go on top of this. I cut a piece that measures 2.5 by 3 inches, and I placed it on a piece of batting that's about 1/2 inch bigger than my foam board. And actually, this is a double piece of batting so that it's nice and fluffy. Cut a piece of my brown pleather, and I flip it over, make sure that the right side is facing outwards, and this should be about 1/4 inch bigger than your batting. And now let's start rolling our batting and our fabric over the sides of our foam board. And you guys, when you're done rolling your first side, you want to go to the opposite side of where you just rolled and roll that side next. It'll just ensure that you have the most even application of your fabric on the top. I then finish my corners the same way that we finished our corners for the cushion for the Nook bench, and now we can flip it over and place it on the top of the first piece that we just made. For the back piece, I cut a piece that measures 2.5 by 5 1/4, and I cover it in my brown pleather. And notice I skipped the felt and the batting on this piece. It's just fabric on this piece, but I covered it pretty much the same way that we covered the other cushions, except for when I get to the corner, we're not going to pull it like this time. We're going to place the nozzle of our hot glue gun in here and try to get a little bit of hot glue into this corner and pinch it. Once your glue is completely dried, you're going to take your scissors and go right up against the back of the foam board and snip off this excess. And now you're going to move up to the corner and try to snip off as much of this excess as possible possible without cutting into the foam board underneath. So your corner should end up looking something like this. I repeated for all 4 corners, giving us a nice sleek piece. Well, except for the back. She's a little busted, but don't worry, we're gonna fix that. Up next, we're gonna take the busted part of our backrest and attach it to the first piece that we made earlier, and we're going to attach it to the back piece over here, the part that we didn't cover in fabric, and we're going to attach it just like this, making sure that our edges line up at the bottom. Now let's make a backrest cushion to cover up all of this bustedness that we have going on up in here. So I cut a piece that measures 2.5 by 3.25, and I covered it the same way that we covered the seat cushion, but this time I want to add some buttons to it. You know how those leather chairs have those buttons like upholstered into the backrest? That's what we're going for. But my problem is that I don't have any buttons. I have these instead. They came with a jewelry making set, and I'm not really sure what you call them, but this is what they look like up close. They kind of look like a straight pin with a flat gold head on the top. So I was thinking if we just stick them into our backrest and pull them out the other side, we have a nice cute little gold button for our backrest. And then for this extra piece back here, I'm going to use a pliers and kind of just bend it inwards. I then repeated it 5 more times to give us a total of 6 buttons on our backrest, and now we can place this piece over our busted piece. And now she's not so busted anymore. Well, she's actually still busted down here. So let's make some armrests. Cut 2 pieces of foam board that measure 3.25 by 3 inches and join them together. Cut a piece of fabric that's about 1/4 inch larger than your piece of foam board and place it on the top. We're now going to start rolling our fabric onto the edges of our foam board, making sure to cover the edge of only 1 piece of foam board. And I repeat that for all 4 of my sides, making sure to put extra dots of glue on my corners and pinch them so that I can go in with my scissors and cut off the excess. For the other side, I drew a line 1.5 inches up, and I'm going to fill this entire space with glue and then place my fabric over it. I then finished rolling my edges and clipping my corners just like we did for the other side. But the reason why I told you guys to put extra glue down here is because that's the part that we're actually going to use to glue to the chair. And if there was no glue holding the fabric to the foam board down there, when we pulled on the armrest, the whole thing would wiggle like this. But because we glued the fabric to the foam board, it should be a lot more stable. Now let's clean up the sides of this armrest. I have this roll of double stick tape. It's about 1 inch wide. So I cut a piece down to size and I cut it in half so it becomes 1/2 inch wide. Cut a strip of my fabric that's about 1.25 inches wide, and I place my double stick tape on the back in the middle of that strip. Remove the backing from my tape and start rolling the sides of my fabric onto the back of my sticky tape. Very carefully going all the way down, and then I repeat for the other side. So after rolling both of your sides, you should end up with a piece that looks like this. And now we are going to start wrapping this piece going all the way around the top, the sides, and the bottom of our armrest. And then when you get all the way back to the beginning, you just take your scissors and you snip off the excess, giving us our first armrest for our chair. And you want to make sure that this piece that we just snipped off right here is in the back when you place it onto your chair. I then repeated to make a second one, and now we have 2 armrests for our chair. For the legs, you guys, I have these wooden pegs that I am so sorry. I don't know where I got these. Again, I've had these forever, so I have no idea where I got them. But this is pretty much what they look like. They have a light brown wood finish, which really doesn't go with our room. So I spray paint them gold. I then place them at the bottom of my chair and repeated to make another one, giving us 2 brown leather chairs that we can place in front of our fireplace. You guys... Someone broke into our library while we were making the chairs, and they decorated the entire place with gold Timu molds. I swear to God, it wasn't me. No, I'm totally kidding. It was me, but I only did a little bit. I think she's gonna love it because it's so minimalistic. But you guys, seriously, don't you think it looks so much better like this? Tell me in the comments down below. Let me know. Do you like it better like this or how it looked before? But now let's make a tiny little table to go in between these 2 chairs so the dolls have a place to put their coffee while they're reading their books. I have this pack of wooden candlesticks that I found at Hobby Lobby, and this wooden circle that I found at my local dollar store. So I glue them together and I start painting it brown so that it matches our room a lot better. You guys, my phone died as I was painting this, and I couldn't stop to charge it just because the paint was drying so fast. But I added a little bit of black over the brown, and then I added a coat of gloss Mod Podge over the entire thing to give it a nice shine. And I am just obsessed with the way that it came out. I think the next thing that's missing from this space is something over the fireplace. I was thinking a mirror, but I don't think a library would have a mirror over the fireplace. Maybe like a Renaissance painting. I printed out this picture of the Mona Lisa from Google, and I thought it would be the perfect art piece for our art decor. So let's carefully cut her out and place her on a piece of foam board. Now for the frame, I do want to use coffee stirrers, but I don't have any at this time. All I have is this large jumbo craft stick. So I cut it into 1/4-inch strips and I spray painted them gold, and I start gluing them on the side of my piece, and I did it all the way around on all 4 sides. And now I'm going to take a few more strips and start placing them on the top, and I do it for all 4 sides on the top. And you guys, since we're already this far into this frame, I feel like we should just add in a couple of gold moldings to the corners and make my signature frame. And you guys, this elevated the room so much. I am obsessed with it. I know it's gold and it's kind of gaudy, but I think she's gonna love it. I was looking around the room, and you guys, I've noticed that these shelves are really tall for a Barbie, so let's make a little ladder so it'll make it easier for them to reach the top shelf. I'm gonna use this 1/4-inch wooden dowel that I found at Home Depot, and I cut 2 pieces that measure 16 inches long. Cut 7 pieces that measure 2 inches, and then we are gonna start placing them every 2 inches going up one side of our 16-inch piece. And I decided to use these tiny little nails to attach my ladder steps, just so that my ladder is stronger and the steps are more secure. Once you're done adding in every single one of your steps going all the way up, now you can add in your second 16-inch piece to the other side. I spray painted it gold so it matches the rest of our room, and now I can place that right over here to make it a lot easier so the dolls can reach those higher shelves. I was also noticing that we didn't have any greenery in this room. I know that we have some outside the window, but just in case she decides to change that to something else, or if I decide to change it to something else, I'm kidding, I'm not keeping this one, you guys. I'm gonna give it to her. But let's make a little plan for the corner over there. I'm going to use this paper roll that I got from the middle of a roll of contact paper. Measure about 4 inches up, and then I'm just going to start cutting that all the way around. And then I'm going to cover it with this beautiful craft paper that I found at Joann's. So I cut a piece down to size, and then I take a glue stick and I just start covering the surface of my tube. Once my surface is nice and coated in my glue, I take my craft paper and I just start wrapping it around. And if you have any excess on the ends like I do, you can just take a scissors and go in and just neatly trim it off, going all the way around. Clean up the edges with 1/4-inch strips of gold craft paper. Add a couple of our little handy dandy moldings to the side to make it look like our pot has little handles. Now let's make a plant that goes inside of it. I cut a wooden dowel down to about 9 inches, or you can make this as tall or as short as you like. And then I'm going to duct tape some shrubbery to the top of it. Now let's use a foil and start wrapping from the tippy top, making sure to cover your duct tape. And I like to just squeeze this onto my wooden dowel so that I get a nice amount of texture. And I just wrap it around a few times until I get the desired thickness that I want, and then I just basically rip off the rest of the foil. Use my fingers to tighten it up, and now we have a tree. No, I'm totally kidding. Okay, now we have to paint it. And I like to start with black. I just layer it on all over, making sure to cover up all of my silver. And if you're having trouble getting into any of the nooks and crannies by brushing it on like this, you can kind of stipple it on like this, and the brush bristles will actually do the work for you and go in there and cover up all of that foil. While that's drying, let's add a bottom to our pot. I cut a piece of gold craft paper, flip it over, place my pot on the top, and then I'm just going to put a little bit of glue in there like this. And once it's completely dried like this, you take your scissors and you start cutting off the excess around the base, going as close as possible as you can get to the paper roll. And there you go. Now our pot has a base to it. Back to our plant. Our paint is now dried. Now I'm going to go in with a little bit of brown and just start covering that black. The reason why we went in with black first is just because it creates some shadows underneath the brown, but it also covers up the foil a lot better than the brown. And as I'm painting, I like to touch on these little branches up here just so that it doesn't go straight from brown to whatever color branches you have up here. Okay, now it's time to lighten things up a bit. Let's go in with a little bit of white and just start brushing it on. And you don't want to put too much white, but you want to lighten up that brown because it was pretty dark. I just place it randomly and use the brown to blend it in. And if for some reason you put too much of any color, like I put a little bit too much white there, you can go in with brown or black or whatever color it is that you put too much of. You can go in with a different color and then add that over so that we get lots of dimension going on. Once it's dried, it's time to pot our plant, and we're going to be using a piece of floral foam for this. I'm going to use the remainder of my paper roll and place it right to the edge of my foam and press down. Once I'm happy with the length of how much has gone into the paper roll, I'm just going to pull it out and snip it off. And now we have the perfect amount to slip into our actual paper roll that we're going to be using, and it just slides right in. Now we can take our plant and stick it into the middle of our floral foam. Use a little bit of green, oops. She's so excited to jump into the pot. I'm going to use a little bit of green moss to fill in the bottom. And I like to place another little plant right down to the bottom to make it look like something else is growing down there. And if you really want to go crazy, you can go in with a little bit of moss and add it to the bark of your tree. I just think it adds so much and it makes it look a lot more realistic. And I think it looks amazing in our room. I am obsessed. So far, our library is looking amazing, but there's one thing still missing, the most important thing. Books. And while I do have quite a few of them for mini brands, I don't have enough to fill all of these shelves. So let's make some. These are some book cover printables that I printed off of Google. So I carefully cut them out and I cut a piece of foam board that's the same size as the cover, place it under the cover, and then fold the rest of it around the piece of foam board. And just like that, we have our first book for our library. And if you want to add a little bit of shine to your cover, you can use a piece of clear tape, stick it on the cover, and wrap it around the back, just like we did for the printable, and then use your scissors to go in and trim off the excess tape, giving us a book with a glossy cover. I'm now gonna go make 5,000 more of these and I'll be right back with the finished product. I ended up making 10,000 more books, and this is what I got. All right, you guys, we did it. And not only does it look amazing, but it wasn't overly fancy. I was actually able to keep the gold and the moldings and stuff like that to a minimum, and everything actually fit into the space that she has. I really hope that she likes it because we have two completely different styles of decorating. Like my idea of like the perfect house is like a mansion in Bel Air, and hers is like a cottage in the woods, which is really weird because her fashion sense is so glamorous. I don't know, to each his own. My favorite things that we made this week, though, were definitely the chairs. Obsessed with those, and the ladder. I actually really love the ladder. I know it was really simple, but I don't know. I don't have one, so I think, yeah, I'm really obsessed with it, and I'm gonna have to make one for myself. I also got her a few Barbies from the 90s, so I really hope that she likes all of her gifts. I will let you guys know in the next video whether or not she liked the library and whether or not she took it. I will be so sad if she doesn't take it, because I was really sad that she didn't take the bakery. Well, that's a lie. I really wanted that bakery for myself. I also really want this library for myself, but I made it for her, so I want her to have it. But if you guys like this video, please give it a huge thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.